Good evening, everyone. It's now 7:04. We're going to begin the meeting. Are there any items to add to the agenda?
I do have a letter for request of road name change. If we could add that to the agenda, please.
Unanimous consent for that? Okay, we'll add that. Any other items to be added? I'd like a motion to approve the agenda with the item added. It's been moved by Councillor Boucher, seconded by Councillor Martel, that we approve the agenda. On discussion? Question's been called. All those in favor signify by raising your right hand. Motion carried. Item 3 on the agenda is the review of the minutes. You've all had the minutes in your package. Is there any questions? Minutes
be adopted as circulated.
It's been moved by Councillor Martel. It's been seconded by Deputy Warden McLean. On discussion? Question's been called. All those in favor signify by raising your right hand. Motion carried. We're moving on to item 4, presentations. We have 3 presentations this evening. We're going to change the order, I guess. The second will actually be the third, and third will be the second. First one is the Cape Breton Partnership. Keith McDonald and Jeff Stanley. Just hit okay. Are you putting both mics on?
Yeah, we'll switch back and forth.
Okay. Okay.
If we can get this, we'll figure that out. Okay, good evening. Thank you, Warden and Council, for giving us time this evening to give an update on what's happening under the Cape Breton Regional Enterprise Network. We'll get right into that. So we have an opportunity at the end to ask any questions, but feel free to jump in at any point in time. And if you have any need for any clarification or want some further details. And the mic is allergic to me. So we're going to give you a quick overview of the Cape Breton Regional Enterprise Network. Just to give a better understanding of Richmond County's investment into the Regional Enterprise Network and some of the priorities that are underway at this time. And as I mentioned, time for a few questions. Today with me is my colleague, I think everyone's familiar with, Jeff Stanley, and he'll be helping me with the question and answer portion of the agenda as well. Just a quick update, the Regional Enterprise Network program is the delivery system of regional economic development now underway by the province of Nova Scotia. When it was originally launched, there was 6 REN jurisdictions, and I'll just give you an update on how things have transpired since the launch of the REN model. REN 1 is the southern or western REN area jurisdiction of Yarmouth, Digby, and surrounding area. They're underway. They have staff, a board, and what they call a LOC as well, all in place. And then they're in their second year of operation. REN jurisdiction 2 is the southern REN. They're all underway as well in their first full year of operation with the CEO, staff, and board in place. And REN jurisdiction number 3 is the Valley. Things have moved forward there as well, and they're fully operational in their second year as well. The Eastern Strait REN is jurisdiction number 5, and that includes the town and county of Antigonish, the district of St. Mary's, Guysborough County, as well as the town of Port Hawkesbury. REN 4 is the only region that has not completely come together, but Colchester County is moving forward with what they hope to have in the new fiscal year, their regional enterprise network underway as well. And of course, we have REN jurisdiction 6, which is Cape Breton, which currently includes the municipalities of Inverness, Richmond, and Victoria. One of the slides I utilize to kind of kick off our updates on the Regional Enterprise Network is The number of businesses per 10,000 population in all of the various municipal units or in the various counties of Nova Scotia. As you can see here, Victoria County is leading the way with just over 1,200 businesses per 10,000 people. And we have Cape Breton County with at the bottom of the spectrum with 381 businesses per 10,000 people. Richmond County is quite a bit above that, but again, one of the focuses with the Regional Enterprise Network is that we need to create a better business environment so that we can have that number of businesses per capita increase, as well as help our existing businesses grow. So this slide just kind of outlines that. The basic tenements of the Regional Enterprise Network is all about the ability to help stimulate and create new business, grow existing business, and attract new business investment to each REN jurisdiction. So the core activities for the Regional Enterprise Networks in Nova Scotia is for each one of them to develop a sub-regional strategy for their area. So all of those jurisdictions, as I mentioned, now have for the first time in quite some time have their own regional focus and identified sectors and priorities within their REN jurisdictions. Number two, it's all about creating a better working relationship and stronger relationship with existing businesses. One of the programs that I'll get into a little bit more detail is called Business Retention and Expansion Program, and that's help carrying the weight with core activity number two. And then last but not least is work on developing a number of economic indicators and information for all of the REN jurisdictions in order to better promote and build business cases for each one of the various REN areas. For the Cape Breton REN, as I mentioned, there's this is basically outlines the oversight for the REN. We have a liaison and oversight committee that enables the REN to exist, and the partners at the table are the province of Nova Scotia with two individuals. There's a municipal affairs advisor as well as Rhonda McDougall, who's the director of investment for Nova Scotia Business Inc. And then each one of the participating municipalities have a representative. With Inverness, that's their warden, as well as Richmond and Victoria County, and all the CEAOs are in place, as well as observers. And I'll add Maris there the next time I do this presentation, Maris. So underneath the liaison and oversight committee, there's a REN board, and that's made up of private sector individuals from the Cape Breton jurisdiction. I have them listed here: Brad McDonald, Dean Green, David Porborski, Mark Dubé, Scott McNeil, and Sean Coyle. So the LOC, I don't want to get into too much detail, but they're the overarching governance body for each one of the RENs in Nova Scotia. And as I mentioned, they're made up of all the participating municipal units and or First Nations communities that were in the REN areas. So their main focus is to strategic input, to provide strategic input to the board of directors, make sure there's accountability for outcomes, there's financial oversight, as well as communication of outcomes to the general public. The REN board gets into more details. They're responsible to ensure that that regional economic development strategy is implemented. There's performance management put in place for the staff of each REN, that there's strong financial stewardship, good governance and policy, as well as managing the day-to-day or the oversight of the CEO's activities. Currently, with the Cape Breton Regional Enterprise Network, there's a number of staff. The Economic Development Officer for Inverness County is Damian McGuinness. For Victoria County, it's Patrick Austin. For Richmond County, it's Jeff Stanley. We have a Communications and Event Coordinator who works out of Bedeck but is responsible for communications for all of the municipal units participating and what the outcomes are for the Regional Enterprise Network. And we also have a BRE Economic Development Officer, Bobby Morrison. And again, BRE is all about business retention and expansion. and we have a strategy and project manager, Nicole Lucas Richardson, who's just finishing up over the next few weeks. So there's 5 identified themes or priority areas that we've been able to gain feedback from the businesses in Richmond County. I'm just going to go through those in a little bit of detail. What we've heard is that seafood and aquaculture remains a significant industry here in this jurisdiction. There's quite a number of employment derived from here. We have some large-scale producer or manufacturers within that sector that play an important role in the Cape Breton economy. The goal is to make sure we continue to support their growth. Some of their challenges going forward certainly include labor force participation, but on top of that, they've identified a number of opportunities, especially with the European Free Trade Agreement and some of the other growing markets, including China. There's a huge demand for seafood and aquaculture, and we can see opportunities working with our current companies to actually grow their footprint currently. Infrastructure, one of the things we've heard from businesses over and over again is that the requirement for improved internet and cellular coverage, particularly in the rural jurisdictions. There's a number of new programs and initiatives that have been released by the federal government as well as the province that will allow for us, if we get organized, new funds available to help improve what we currently have under this internet and cellular coverage infrastructure. This is certainly a significant backbone for the businesses within Richmond County, so we want to make sure we are able to improve this important business infrastructure. Entrepreneurship and employment. Talked quite a little bit about entrepreneurship already, and the importance that we need to grow the number of businesses here in the jurisdiction. So one of the focuses of the REN will be to continue to work and foster entrepreneurial endeavors within Richmond County. Investment readiness is another key plank, particularly around Point Tupper and other communities and some of the other light industrial parks that are within the county. We need to be able to promote those better, make sure we have accurate information around all of these various business centers so that we can continue to promote and attract new business to these centers. And last but not least is the culture and creative economy. And certainly in order to grow this, I already talked about the infrastructure needs of internet and cellular coverage, but tourism, culture, creative economy, they all rely on the internet as well. But we have a great deal of individuals here that are already within this sector, and we just need to work with them in order to help grow this important segment of our entrepreneurial landscape. So some of the services the CB REN will be providing on an ongoing basis and can continue to work with Warden and the council and staff here at Richmond County is strategic planning coordination. We can certainly work with the municipality to help engage businesses and communities throughout your area, throughout the municipality, in order to gain feedback on what important issues and opportunities that they feel are out there currently. As I mentioned, with business retention and expansion, that's all about sitting down with businesses all over Richmond County and getting their feedback through quite a detailed survey and interview process on what challenges and opportunities they are working on, and bring that information not only back to council but to all the various other economic development organizations that are in place through the province and the federal government, so that we can all work collaboratively to address the challenges that they may be experiencing or the growth opportunities that they may have identified as well. On top of that, we're looking at doing a number of open houses to celebrate our current and existing businesses in Richmond County, as well as a number of roundtables and so that we can connect the municipality with our businesses here in Richmond County. So one of our key focuses is making sure we get out to businesses on an ongoing basis and that we bring back their challenges and opportunities back to council here and staff as well. So some of the things we happen to put in place just over the last number of months, we've had a number of open houses with existing businesses in December. We also had a business forum in St. Peter's where we had a good number of people show up to talk about what's happening in that part of the county and what opportunities there are. And we had a great guest speaker who's in the audience, so I won't pick on him. So, but it went very well, and we had a lot of great feedback from that session. On top of that, what we've developed over the past year under the REN is a land asset database. And basically, this is an online tool that's going to provide information on all the land, buildings, warehousing that is available for existing, or that's available in each one of the municipalities under the REN. So on top of that, we also will have provincial, municipal, and federal land that's available for development on an online tool. So this has been underway and under development for a number of months, and now it is launched and it's live. We're going to do a larger kickoff publicly within the next 2 months. What we're doing is just testing out a few more bugs. But basically, the idea is, in the past, we used to receive cold calls from Nova Scotia Business Inc. And or just cold calls from anyone interested in looking for locations to set up their business, and it was often difficult to reply because we had to reach out to all the municipal units, other partners, as well as realtors to find out what was available. Now all we have to do is send potential investors to this website, and they can do quite a comprehensive search, and on top of that we can respond quickly as well. So we've already been utilizing this site for some inquiries we have had over the last few months, and we're able to respond within a day, if not a few hours, with a number of sites, as opposed to taking weeks, maybe a month before we get something back to them that certainly would be nowhere as comprehensive. So we see this as a valuable tool going forward, and you're going to see that a number of the other regional enterprise networks in Nova Scotia replicate this tool over probably the next 2 years. Community profiles. You should have in your hands, council and staff, the final draft for the Richmond County community profile. Basically, that's a prospectus that you can utilize anytime you have a visiting company or you're going on trade missions to provide that information very quickly to anyone looking to invest in Richmond County. You'll have hard copies, as well as there'll be a digital link put on your website so that anyone can quickly find out key business infrastructure and key labor market information for Richmond County so they can help build their business case. We're very excited for that tool, or those documents to be put together, because we did not have that information readily available and packaged in an appropriate manner in the past. Before that, we had investinCapeBreton.com. So that's basically, we're going to be taking those community profiles and putting them on a main central business portal for the Cape Breton region, and it's called investinCapeBreton.com, and Richmond County will be certainly highly profiled on that as well. That also has been launched, and it's live, and we've been testing it, and it will be ready for public launch in the next month. And last but not least, we've been basically trying to bring together a comprehensive business directory for all of the 3 participating municipal units. So we've been able to put that together. Richmond County already has a very solid business directory on their website, but what we've been able to do is expand and add additional businesses to this more of a pan-regional business directory, so that anyone looking to move into the jurisdiction, whatever requirements they may need from other suppliers or contractors, they can quickly, instead of just trying to go through the yellow pages, where maybe not all businesses are located, we can have this very easy to utilize online tool for any business moving to the area. And last but not least, we've been working with all of our economic development partners on what's called lead handling protocol. In the past, it was if you were a company moving into the jurisdiction or looking to move into the jurisdiction, it may be difficult to see who to talk to first, who do you talk to second, how do you navigate your way through to find out what's available to help out your move to the jurisdiction. And what we're doing is basically putting a step-by-step process together so that any company that's looking to invest in the jurisdiction has a very clear route as in who's on first, who's on second, who's on third, so that we make this as easy as possible for them to make an investment decision into the area. So we're just about completed that process, and then we'll be able to track any new inquiries on an ongoing basis and make sure that the proper protocols and proper follow-up is put in place for anyone knocking on our door. So that's just a few items. I don't want to take up too much time. There's a bunch more we could get into and in much more detail as well, but we didn't want to take up all of your time this evening. We know there's other presentations, but hopefully I gave you a good high-level overview of what's been transpiring and underway, and we're more than ready for any questions that folks may have on anything to do with the Regional Enterprise Network for Cape Breton.
Thank you, Keith, for the presentation. Is there any questions or comments?
Keith, just wondering if the Cape Breton Partnership played a role in the cell towers, any of the cell towers that have been recently erected in some of the remote areas of Cape Breton. I know that I believe the upper portion of Cape Breton Island has recently had some cell towers put up, so I'm just wondering if your organization was involved in that.
Well, Victoria County certainly took the lead in those that are in more northern jurisdictions of Cape Breton, but right now we are working with each municipal unit to identify new opportunities under two new programs that have been launched. One that already has an application process released. There's funding for up to a total of $500,000 for not cellular, but identifying key parts of key areas of a municipal unit that really require an upgrade in online services. So Jeff, as well as Damien and Patrick in Victoria County, are all putting those together. I think a number of them have already been submitted, so we hope to have some success there. But we're also tracking some of the other more significant funds that are being put together for an overall Canada-wide strategy around communications. So the CRTC just even announced themselves that internet is now a basic infrastructure that everyone has or should have access to. So that should open some new doors and new opportunities to utilize some of those programs to help not only just Richmond County but other rural areas in Canada.
Any more questions? Councillor Martel?
Keith, talked about the business visits. Have you got any business visits to date?
Yes, we've done a number to date of what we've been doing. We just had a meeting last week on this. We've identified 20 for each municipality that we're going to be doing from now until the end of March. And then we're going to look at doing a whole group of new sessions in the next fiscal, but currently what we're focusing on is tourism-related businesses. We all know that last year had a very significant jump of 15% for Cape Breton in tourism-related activity, And so what we want to make sure is that we get out there and talk to individuals in that sector to find out if they are looking to expand now or look because of that growth within the tourism industry over the last year, or are they looking to potentially move out of the sector, and is there ways that we can do or help them identify new ownership or do some succession planning with them. So over the next 3 months, we'll be sitting down with at least 20 businesses in Richmond County that are in that sector to get their information.
As you talk to businesses, have you heard or identified what the businesses think of the role of the municipality to help them grow their business or to help with their needs? Because, I mean, municipality is not in business to do business, but they've been talking about the fact that how can we help as a municipality to help them start or grow their business?
Certainly, it's a little bit different message we receive from various municipal units. Some of the feedback we get, particularly, I won't pick on a particular municipal unit, but one municipal unit is all about just the speed around permitting and the movement of permits through their internal system. But with Richmond County, most of the feedback has been very positive. I think Richmond County has an open for business track record, particularly around a significant industrial type of projects as well. You've been able to work with a lot of your partners in the Point Tupper area to move things forward, and I think you're in a good position as compared not only to other municipalities in Cape Breton, but throughout Nova Scotia to continue that movement. And you have some partners that are presenting later that I'm sure will be highlighting that as well. But certainly, I do think because of the LNG projects and those type of endeavors that are moving forward, it may if they were in other jurisdiction, it might be much more difficult to move them as quickly along as what's been happening in Richmond County.
My last question is, I know your mandate is more to work with businesses. How much partnering have you done, like with social groups or community groups? Because usually if people want to be interested in the community, they're going to be interested not only in the business side, but social side also.
Yeah, that's still very...
partnering with community groups to get, like, for example, you say you have an inventory of land and stuff that are available. And on that side, do you have some stuff or data that would help with that side of things? Or?
Certainly, we should over the next few months actually have a layer or a listing of all the social enterprises as well in the Cape Breton jurisdiction area. We've done different things under the REN umbrella over the last over the last year and a half. I guess I could mention one is some community organizations will identify projects that will help that community attract business. So, for example, I'll use my hometown in Mabu as an example. They have a company there that wants to attract more people, but it's very difficult to find land, or there's not a huge housing market there. So what we were able to do is work to identify some potential properties and then promote those to developers. And we gave them a synopsis of what could potentially be available for them to make sure that there's clientele for them if they did build some new infrastructure around housing. So we've been able to successfully pitch that to one contractor that's looking very seriously at putting some new housing stock up. So people could argue that that's more of a community-orientated project, but we need that in place in that community in order to attract more people to work at particularly to businesses that have had struggles in attracting employees because they didn't feel that there was adequate housing available in the Mabu jurisdiction.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Keith, can you explain the relationship between Cape Breton Partnership and the REN just for the audience?
Oh, certainly.
Yeah.
In the rest of Nova Scotia, the other regional enterprise networks, the board has the duties to hire a CEO and then manage the activities of that CEO, and the CEO goes and hires a number of staff. In Cape Breton, for this Cape Breton Ren, it's a little bit different. Instead of going out and creating a new entity, right now the Cape Breton Partnership has been contracted by the 3 municipal units participating, as well as the province of Nova Scotia. So it is a little bit of difference, but basically there's still a board in place. The LOC, as I mentioned, is still in place. That's across the board for each regional enterprise network. But instead of just going out and hiring new staff and putting them in place, the partnership has been a willing partner and been identified as an entity that's already been doing this work for 10 years. And we've been contracted this year to perform the regional enterprise work for the 3 participating municipal units.
And I guess the dollars that every municipality put in are matched by the province as well.
Yes.
And that's managed by one of the municipalities.
Yeah, so each municipal unit, when they contribute to the pool of resources available through the REN infrastructure, each municipal dollar is matched by the province of Nova Scotia as well. And then with each REN, one of the municipal units take the responsibility of pulling all of that money together and then distributing it to each of the regional enterprise networks boards.
Okay. You speak of that the board is responsible, or I guess evaluates or manages the CEO. Would that be yourself?
Yeah, currently that would be myself.
Okay, of the Cape Breton Partnership.
Mhm.
Now, the board that you have listed here, some of them are from Cape Breton County.
Yes.
Are we going to be changing that, or is that going to stay as is, or should there be 2 from each municipality?
2 of those individuals are remaining due to the fact that the CBRM was originally within the REN infrastructure, but there will be changes in the board over the next number of months to make sure that there's representation from the municipal units that are participating. That couldn't happen to date, the change, just due to the governance structure of the REN currently. But that will be taking place, yeah.
Soon?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. No further questions? Thank you for the presentation.
Thank you, everyone, for your time and questions. Thanks.
Moving on to our next presentation, we have Dave Hart from New Star, Richie Mann from Melfort Terminals, Mark Dubé from Port Hawkesbury Paper, and I don't believe Paul has made it, right? And Amanda Mumbercat.
Well, good evening, and thank you to Council for inviting us here tonight. I'll introduce myself, David Hart. I'm with an employee of New Star Terminals and President of the Chamber of Commerce. And with me tonight, as mentioned, is Richie Mann with Melfort and the First Vice President of the Chamber, and Mark Dubé with Port Hawkesbury Paper and head of our Industrial Committee, and Amanda Mumbercat is the Executive Director of the Chamber of Commerce. I have to apologize a little bit. When I began this discussion, it was some weeks ago with Gilbert, and a follow-up to a little bit of the Mayors and Wardens meeting. I hadn't quite realized it would be in such a public format, so I didn't wear my best tie, and I don't have a presentation, so I apologize for that. So we're going to talk a little bit about a couple of hats here I have to wear tonight, both as President of the Chamber and with New Star and as a member of the Industrial Committee, so I asked these gentlemen to sit with me. But to talk about port development, I guess, and business activities within the port as a whole. New Star, I think we're all fairly familiar with what we do. We're an oil handling and storage facility located in the Strait of Canso. We're part of an international organization of some 80 terminals worldwide, making us the second or third largest terminal operator in the world, and I believe the second largest pipeline operator in the U.S., which is significantly larger by any measure. I've been in business since 1992, approximately 7.5 million barrels of in-tank, what we call static storage, and about 80 employees and another 80 what we call contract employees, and then that varies from season to season depending on the construction and the projects that we have. So our focus to date is we started back in '92 with 7 ships and 3 million barrels. We've escalated to 2008 where we saw some 30 million barrels and over 320 ships. Around 2008 we began to see a decline where for today in the last number of years it's certainly leveled off to around 130 ships a year and about 8 million tons of throughput. So it's really changed the way we look at our business. The demographics have changed, the world market has changed, and you see it changing internally in Canada and of course across the globe. So we've remained very focused on our business and with our corporate interest to focus on safety, certainly of that our employees and our facilities and the communities, operational excellence, mechanical integrity, and what I call economic control, make sure economic controls, and of course giving back to our community. So that's kind of been our focus. And then a lot of discussions that have come up over the last number of weeks and months with regards to things that could impact that business. You've begun to see us engage, both as a terminal operator and as a member of the business community. So it's a different time out there. It's a different market out there. So we're very focused on the costs. So a lot of people see a lot of those large assets moving through the ports, and they think there's some pretty deep pockets there. But really, we're a service provider, and we provide land-based storage to those free market traders and many of the major oil companies. So it's pennies per barrel per month. So when people looking at putting in structures and infrastructures that could impact those relationships we have and the cost of operating the port, we're going to stand up and talk about that and make sure our opinions are known about that, because we think in the long run, those things will affect our business. So we're working very closely together with many of our business partners in the port, including new business projects like Melford. They're important to us. We have certainly an interest in seeing them succeed in assets that they can use, and even with Mark, who's of course your largest industrial operator within the port. A lot of questions have come up lately with regards to port governance and port development, and I know as an industry we've spoke very openly that we don't support it. The premise of setting up a new government structure in a time when people are calling for less government and less oversight, I think it's appropriate, especially in a time when we look at our business as, certainly because of the size and the number of ships, that we pay over 80% of those harbor dues to date. So the idea of setting up a new infrastructure on one facility with 2 customers, we don't think in the long run that's either economically sustainable or economic diverse to start those new structures. So again, we're very much against that, and I think as a group we haven't supported. Now, not that we don't support port development. Absolutely we do, but we simply don't think we need to set up another structure or another agency, to address those types of issues, that we can work collaboratively. And I heard some great words from Keith McDonald this morning, and I think he made some really good points that, we as a chamber and we as an industrial committee and we as port users are willing to work with and focus on. He's already talking about developing asset inventories of assets, and certainly business inventories, and then sort of protocols for development and engagement. So we generally believe, if you look at the port, or this idea of divestiture and the moving of those harbor dues, it's simply not necessary, that there's existing organizations within the port to address those issues. And if you look at the geographic makeup of the port and how it is today, the major landowner of the port is the Nova Scotia Business Inc. So the idea, I guess that takes me back to the premise of, if the idea of doing divestitures in the port and the transferring the port and the harbor dues, it's really based on the concept of the federal government looking for a means to develop and to market federal lands. But the reality of this port is that the lands are either privately owned or they're owned by Nova Scotia Business Inc. So it's then coupled with the fact that you have one company paying the majority of the fees, and that it's not sustainable in the long run. So we think we need to refocus on what we have, and work together collaboratively and look at business and development opportunities as a group without creating new business entities or new governance entities because at the end of the day, To us, we see it as not only being a nice free deep water port, but not having a CPA or a governance model is one of our largest, we think, economic advances over other ports in the region. And we think we shouldn't look at that lightly, or we shouldn't dismiss that and move into something that we don't know what the outcome is. And the other, I know a lot of you have had discussions on this issue, and there's been a lot of talk about these harbor dues, and of course we just finished the year end, and I can't really tell you at this meeting what those numbers are, but they're not the millions of dollars that people have led you to believe. And it's even less than $1 million, and much less than $1 million than the amount of harbor dues that are being generated for this proposed entity. And we're very concerned in the sense that, for two reasons. One is that those harbor dues exist because New Star's business and the vessels that use our facility. That's why those harbor dues are generated. And they're not dollars that come in and go out. They're dollars that come in because they're part of my dock charges. And I do them as a single point service and single point billing so that customers and traders know what the cost of using the port's going to be. So if you take them from me and you start giving them to someone else and they start changing them, that really upsets the market and makes it inherently unpredictable for traders when they're moving oil. So we really try in the long run to create stability in the port, and we do not want to lose that economic advantage. So I guess that's one other premise. I forgot something else I want to say about the dues, the harbor dues. The reality is that this money simply disappears into Ottawa. That's not true. Those harbor dues are used to fund federal agencies and services that are currently provided in the port. So you're talking Transport Canada, ship safety, Canadian Border Services, Canadian Security. So all those services that we now have in the port, for what we pay for them, we generally believe and know that they're undervalued. So that, if you're not going to take those dollars from the federal government and have existing agencies within the federal government not look to be compensated for the dollars that they've now lost, and Gilbert, we talked about this. And that's really a question that hasn't been answered. So at the end of the day, we could look as an organization that could end up being double dipped, and our customers are going to end up paying for that. And of course, they're the ones at the end of the day who are going to decide whether they're going to use the port or not. So I think it's just to our benefit to continue with the status quo in these most difficult times, that it creates stability, and we move forward cooperatively in existing groups, and we work together, to look at issues, port development, and those types of engagements to see where that takes us, but to stay away from this issue of governments and setting up new structures and transferring those harbor dues. That's all I have to say. Questions? Richie?
Well, I think I could echo a lot of what David said. I probably don't have to, but I've been involved now for about a decade or a little better with Melford Terminals. And we actually have three terminals, or three companies, the Melford Atlantic Gateway, which is a joint venture with SSA Marine Terminals out of Seattle, the largest independent terminal operator in the Western Hemisphere, who have made an investment in our company to be a minority player, minority partner, which I believe demonstrates how serious they take this project and how much they believe in it. We also own the Melford Railway Company, and we own the Melford Logistics Park. They fall under the Melford International Terminal umbrella, if you will. We have spent about $45 million of private sector money. There's not been one penny of money from any one of the three levels of government in our project. It's all been privately financed, and that includes land purchase, all our legal work, our marketing work, our development, our design, up to this time. One thing I want to say, because it I think drives home a point that perhaps only we could talk about. We purchased about 700 acres of land from the province of Nova Scotia and the municipality of Guysborough County. We purchased that at fair market value. It went through three assessments or three appraisals, and we purchased a fair market value. Those 700 cost us little less than two 70-acre terminals in Halifax each pay in rent to the Halifax Port Authority each and every year. It cost us less to purchase 700 acres at fair market value than each one of those pay for 70 acres each and every year for rent. Multiply that by 35 years and figure out the advantage the Strait of Canso has over existing ports that have a public or a Canadian Port Authority. It's staggering. And when we first went out to attempt to develop this project, the two biggest selling points that attracted investment to the project, that $45 million that we've now spent, the two biggest selling points were the fact that there was no public port authority, that it was privately owned land and would be privately owned land, and a privately owned terminal, and two, that there was no legacy labor agreement established in the 1950s in the days of bulk handling in different ports. And while we've intended and we are working to be a very fair employer, which will be unionized employment and whatnot, we will not have labor clauses that exist because they were developed in 1950 that are redundant today and don't exist. Those two single points were the things that most attracted industry participants to this project. And why anyone would knowingly give those up or risk it, even if there are things that we don't know, but risk those advantages, it would amaze me that we would jeopardize development in the Strait of Canso around our ports without knowing exactly what we're getting into. We have been working now, since we've got our joint venture partner in particular, we'd like to say we could make this terminal happen overnight. These types of projects don't happen until they're ready to happen, and they're influenced more by global conditions than they are by anything local. And the fact that we've owned the land, we've done all the environmental work, we've done all the prep work we can do, we've got the money identified, you'd think snap your fingers and build it. There are still global conditions that have to fall in place, and that's what we're working on. We're working on the commercial aspects that will include the final costing of each and every element of this operation, so that when we go to the carriers who can actually make this happen, we say, here's what it will cost you to put cargo through Melfort International Terminal and Melfort Atlantic Gateway. This is the cost that it will be. Here's your advantage. And that's what we're working on now. And that is all coming together, we think, quite nicely, so that in hopefully the very near future, and I won't identify that in terms of days or weeks, but that we're getting to the point where we can now go out to those carriers and say, here's the deal. And we hope, and we're optimistic, as are our partners, that we will be very favorably received when we do that. So, when we've gone to Transport Canada, we said, what's included if, in fact, there is a local governance authority that can take the harbor dues in the Strait of Canso? What costs are going to then be borne by the industry that's left behind? And they can't answer us, or they won't answer us. So we throw up a red flag and we say we have to proceed with caution. When we've approached the people who have proposed putting a new governance structure in place, we said, what would you use the money for if you got your hands on this money? And they haven't been able to tell us. They can't market New Star Terminals. David Hart does that. They can't market Port Hawkesbury Paper. Mark Dubé does that. They can't market Melfort Terminals. We do that. They can't market Marietta. Mark Marietta does that. In fact, they own, the people that have proposed this, they own a wharf in Mulgrave. So they could market that. But they can't market the Strait because, as David said, it's not federal government land, it's privately owned land, or it's owned by Nova Scotia Business Inc. or controlled by Nova Scotia Business Inc. for the province. So we've thrown up caution, and I guess in fairness, we've thrown up opposition to this idea because we believe not only will it jeopardize and see increased costs for existing business, but it certainly poses a threat to any potential businesses in the Strait, or certainly put them, or it will cause the loss of an advantage that we currently have. So in support of what David said, that's, one thing I would point out, the last time I sat at the Richmond County Council table, I was the deputy warden of the county. I couldn't fill those shoes today, but Mr. Goyesh was actually the warden, and the rest of you were probably too young to be involved then, so thank you.
Yeah, just a couple of points. One is I support this fully from direction from Port Hawkesbury Paper, it doesn't impact our paper-making operation. Well, to an extent it does, because we bring clay and caustic in by ship to our wharf. But we're working on expanding the number of businesses that we have at our site. We're working with the partnership. We're working with the communities, and we have been able in the transload area to create more business. It's not as much business as we'd like, but it doesn't happen as easily as we all hope it would. But we're also at the same time seeing that the business we are creating, a lot of it comes because of the advantages we have in the port area. So we're working on certainly communicating those and making sure those can turn into more jobs on the site, which can be more people. But as importantly, we see it as the opportunity to bring new businesses either to our site or using some of the assets from our site. And for the municipality, that's really what they're after from a tax base, adding to the tax base here. So we agree fully with, after we've looked at it and studied it, it's an advantage for us. Let's not do things to take those advantages away, because they're so critical to attract new opportunity. As a business, we've had a lot of exciting changes over the last year, challenges with CVD, changes with new products we're making. But rather than talk about them here, I'd like to invite the council and the warden and council to come to the mill at your convenience over the next short period of time. We'll show you some of those new products. We'll talk about CVD, and we'll show you some of the things that are happening on our forestry side. And then you can go through the mill and see some of the things that we're trying to do, and then see the employees, because many of them are from Richmond County, and I think that'd be something that we'd welcome, and at your convenience, just let me know when that could happen, and we'll talk about those things then.
So I think our message here tonight is am I good to go? So I think a message here tonight is, again, to thank you and to sort of share openly with you, what our views are. And I think if the idea of setting up a port authority is to enhance or attract, new business, we need to watch and take care of what we have. I mean, you have an existing operator, ourselves. I mean, you have two of potentially the largest projects the East Coast have seen us 40 years, and your largest employer in the area telling you that it's not the way to go, or certainly it's not the right way to go, that there are existing opportunities and infrastructure for us to work together wholly with the municipalities, with their government partners, and with the chambers, to find other solutions so that we maintain that economic advantage or those economic edges, and we don't throw them away lightly. So that's really the message we want to share with you tonight together. So thank you very much.
Councillor Martel?
So, Dave, we had met with you guys a couple of years ago when they talk about this stuff, and at that time it was pretty well what you're saying today is that the status quo was acceptable now because of the things you mentioned tonight. So I think it worked well over the last couple of years, so why change it? If it works, why change it? One question for Richie. Richie, what's the story with Sydney? Sydney, they're talking about. What is their competition for you guys? Is it something, are you in partnership with them? Is it a deterrence to get you where you guys want to be? Like, I'm not really understanding the whole picture.
No, we're not in partnership with Sydney, and we don't pretend to know all of what Sydney's doing, no more than I suppose they know what we're doing. I think we have an advantage in that we are 100% private sector, and we don't really tell anybody what we're doing unless we have to tell them, or it's to their advantage. So most of what we do is very quiet, and that's the way our investors like it. I think, just common sense wise, I think there's a couple of issues where we probably have advantage. First and foremost is the rail line, where the rail line to the Strait of Canso is in reasonably good operating condition. Mark could attest to that. Does not require much by way of an upgrade to carry double stack containers to meet the existing CN line in Debert. That's not the case in St. Peter, or in Cape Breton. And, we deal, we got a very close relationship with the Genesee and Wyoming Railway Company that owns the short line. And I think the cost of upgrading the line would be extremely costly. Not the number that's thrown around publicly, but extremely high to do that. I think, water depth is an issue. I think ice in the harbor is an issue. And, I don't know how, like I say, I'm not privy to all of their business. I don't know how they deal with them. But if, we're proposing a terminal that today, and we've had this validated, I think, 7 times since we've started by engineering firms, the cost today would be about $350 million US. The last figure I've heard for a container terminal Sidney is about $1.2 billion. I don't think there's enough containers in Eastern Canada to get a return on investment on that type of investment. Like I say, they may know something I don't, but I think on the surface, those are some of the bigger challenges, and I think there's some of the things that probably give us a bit of a leg up.
I was certainly surprised to hear them even thinking about doing a terminal where, like you say, you got the advantage with a nice ice-free harbor and the depth, and they have to get their harbor dredged every second or third year. So I'm just thinking, what's the game plan here?
Well, I think, all of that are issues that, they should probably answer, not me, but I would think one of the biggest, and I say this knowing what we've been put through by carriers and potential cargo owners over the past 10 years, and I would think the biggest impediment would be rail, above and beyond all of the other problems.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Boucher?
Thank you, Warden Marshall. Dave, this is a question for you. Could you explain to the council here what Port Marine's, what their business is in the whole Air Strait area?
I'm sorry, Gilbert, which?
Superport Corporation?
Actually, Gilbert, that's a good question. I did have the opportunity to sit on the board for 6 years during my time even at New Star. So they're basically a small harbor operator. They own 2 wharves, one in Mulgrave and one in Port Hawkesbury, that was back in the early mid-90s divested to them from the federal government, and they were given a sum of money. I don't remember the number exactly, but I believe it was around $10 million to run it then as sort of a private organization and to provide what services they could within the port. So they're really no different than Mark's, as a private company, no different than Mark's or New Star or even any other operator in the port. So I guess.
But I think their main job is to clean up any spills or anything.
Oh, Gilbert, that's a different. I think what you're talking about is Point Out Marine Services.
Yes, but that's it.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
sorry.
Sorry, that's all right. No, that's fine. Point Out Marine Services is a subsidiary of New Star, and what we are, it's actually a company that I manage, is what's called a Marine Ancillary Services. So basically what we do, the terminal is a bonded warehouse, and basically we manage everything from the flange out. So the vessels, the tugboats, the line boats, the vessel agents, the channeling, pilots, those types of services that logistically bring the vessel from outside the harbor limits into the dock and then back out again. So one of the other major roles we have is as one of the 4 certified response organizations in Canada that's under Transport Canada, that we provide marine operational spill response to vessels and terminals that are regulated under the Canadian Shipping Act.
Does some of the funds that you receive now for docking, does that fund this organization?
No, they're actually quite separate. They're 2 separate entities. So it's a good question. A lot of you may remember years ago what they have in Canada. There's a 2-fund system for those types of operations. One is called the Shipshores Oil Pollution Fund, and that's held by the federal government, and it's paid for by the tanker operators, Gilbert. And what that does, it's held in trust as basically a damage deposit. So if a vessel or a black oil vessel or a persistent oil vessel has a pollution, it's there to fund it with other tiered insurance, international insurance layers to fund that. What Point Out Marine Service does, it charges under the CSA what's called a BOCO cargo fee. So we charge so many pennies per ton to maintain the equipment, personnel, facilities, and infrastructure to be able to respond effectively and immediately to spills within our geographic region.
Yeah, I know there's a lot of fishermen that
Participate in the program, that's, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they do. They're certainly value added. They bring a lot of local knowledge and skill to the area, and of course, they're great boat operators, and they're good to have in that family. Yeah.
Thanks, Dave.
You're welcome, sir.
More questions? Councillor Gayesh?
Yes, I don't know what, who to direct the question to, Richie or David Hart or Mark today, but the Port Authority that's already set up, it's there, it exists in Roxbury that we're talking about, a Port Authority where you're gonna, okay, who wants to change or develop a structure of governance for this Port Authority we're talking about? Is there a special group there or something?
Well, the port authorities were created when the Canada Marine Act was passed in the 1990s, and ports in Canada were divested to other ownership, if you will. There was a set of criteria set up by the Government of Canada at the time, and there was 17 ports, I believe, in Canada that qualified to be Canadian port authorities. They were considered to be the major ports in the country. For example, Halifax, St. John's, Montreal, Vancouver, those type ports. The Strait did not qualify for a number of reasons, but there was a second process of divestiture, if you will. And first of all, the ports were offered to the provincial governments. In most cases, I think in all cases, the provincial governments passed. They were offered to municipal governments. In the Strait, that would have been complicated because the port, well, Maris, you've probably could hit a 9-iron from one spot in the Strait and hit 4 or 5 different municipal units. So it's somewhat complicated. So it then went to private sector operators. The Strait, I think under probably the leadership of Paul Krisman, who at the time was the head of what's now New Star Terminals, they created the Superport Corporation, a board of directors, and they accepted the divestiture money, which I think in total was about $11.8 million, and they created the Superport Corporation, and that money was to be used to upgrade the wharfs in Port Hawkesbury and Mulgrave, and then to operate and manage them. And that's been the situation to this day. I think, and maybe I'm not being fair, but in my opinion, the Superport Corporation has somehow believed they had a mandate to do development throughout the entire port. And if you read, I think, the articles of incorporation and the mandate, I don't think that's the case. They own a couple of wharves, they operate those wharves, and so, but they have been, over the past 6, 7, 8 years, the organization or the group, the company that's been trying to drive the creation of a Canadian Port Authority.
Okay, thank you.
So that's
Thank you
really
very much.
how it works.
Is that all, Councillor
That
Gayesh?
answers my question.
Well, I have a few questions. Okay, Dave, you spoke of Point Tupper Marine Services. You manage that? Is that through
It's a subsidiary of New Star.
of New Star?
Yep.
Okay, the fees, the boat comes in and there's fees charged. You say you look after that as well?
Correct.
Through Point Tupper Marine Services or through New Star? Or
No, through Point Up Marine Services.
Okay,
So Point Up Marine Services is certified or authorized by Transport Canada to provide a service and charge a fee for those services of providing pollution response to vessels and oil terminals that are designated.
okay, so that's this extra pennies on the,
Yes.
on
It's
the,
a public,
barrel.
it's a public number.
okay. Now, is that the only fee that a ship pays when they dock at your dock?
Oh, no. Well, I want to first go back to the first fee because I want to talk about how stability about those fees and stability of port costs are important. That fee that PTMS set for the bulk, what they call the bulk oil cargo fee, or the per ton movement of oil in and out of the port, that's been the same fee since 1992. We have not changed it. It doesn't matter if it goes up, it doesn't matter if it goes down.
We as Port Marine or we as New Star?
We as Point Tupper Marine Services.
Point Tupper Marine, okay.
So your question is good. The second part of your question is there are 2 fees at the terminal. You'd have the storage fees, and then you'd have the marine docking fees.
Okay, the storage fees go to New Star.
They go to New Star. They are a separate company, a bonded warehouse and a land-based storage facility.
Okay, but I guess what we're talking, those fees, the Port Authority
no
wouldn't
no
cover
effect.
those, and
No.
wouldn't.
You're talking about the harbor dues. So you're right. So in our dock, when a vessel is nominated and comes to our dock,
Yes.
they pay a dock fee to come to our, of which we include a number of fees, including the harbor dues.
So it's the harbor dues. Okay. I learned today that there's 2 or 3 imaginary lines in this straight area.
Port, yeah. That goes way back. So you have 3 ports within one geographic area. These artificial lines that are drawn somewhere between Point Tupper and Mulgrave and Port Hastings. So
And those fees, you manage all of these fees, all these harbor fees?
Only for
no,
the vessels.
yeah,
that call
only
it
that's
Easter.
that's correct. So what we do as a company, we provide single point service and single point billing to the users, the vessels that use our terminal, not the whole port.
Just your terminal.
Correct.
So what happens for somebody using your terminal, Mark?
We have 2 different brokers that manage that for us.
Okay.
FK Warren is one that has a facility, and we use another broker that creates some business for us. And
Okay.
those fees, the same fee for the harbor dues is collected by them or paid by us, depending on the circumstance.
Okay.
And they're then submitted to the federal government as part of the ships that come in.
Okay, you made a statement earlier, the money isn't going to Ottawa, and now I'm hearing it's going to Ottawa. So where's it going?
Disappearing in Ottawa.
It's not, it doesn't just disappear into Ottawa and it's available there for use. And that was sort of a marketing premise we heard early on from some of the proponents, that the money was there, it was available, it was simply disappearing in Ottawa. It doesn't disappear in Ottawa. It pays for services that are currently existing within the port by federal employees and federal agencies. That was the
For example,
point.
the harbor master would be paid with those fees and the cost of the harbor master.
Security and ship safety and ship security, those types of services. So it's there for a reason, and it's there to fund federal government agency activities.
Is there any extra that's sitting there in Ottawa, or pretty much all the fees
I think
that?
there's a lot sitting in Ottawa myself.
That was a bad question.
Yeah.
In relation to these harbor dues, is there anything extra? Do you think all that money's coming back to provide services for us, or it's sitting there as an insurance in case something happens?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. I apologize if I went over that a bit quickly, but and it's one of the risks and uncertainties that we were talking about, because generally, if you look at the amount of harbor dues that would generally be available in the port, it's not as much as has been put out there. And generally believe, with the amount of services that are being provided by the federal government, is that it's the service is underrated in terms of the cost. So they're charging less than the services that they're providing.
So the government is giving us more than
I would
dollars.
generally, if you look at the number of employees, the number of services, and the division of labor that is in bringing vessels to and from a port, I would say yes.
So what can we as a municipality do then? We can, as we did years ago, making a motion to, if these people come to us, because we are only one part of the geography for that port, we can write something for the federal government to
Well, I
say
think
they're not divested, or
yeah.
should we look at taking it over, or?
Well, I think I wish I could make that decision. I think it's important. I think we've given you, what is our best answer tonight about the direction that we need to go in. And one is the status quo, and 2 is to focus on development and not governments. So, and there were a lot of people be very glad to have what Richmond has within its municipalities and within its borders. So, and any significant changes that affect our businesses in the long run, as our business remains stable and costs increase, Richmond will be the biggest loser. So I think it's very important that Richmond pays attention to what, we're telling you about what our concerns are, and make the best decision based on those, those relationships that we build. It's our best advice, I guess. But I think the status quo is fine.
Is our next move to write to the government?
I believe the mayors and wardens at the last meeting have already made a motion that, and to get this thing off the table.
Our warden was there.
Yes. To get this thing off the table and not and put it behind us. Every year it interferes with our, our business and our operating. When we look at our expenses and at risk, it interferes with projects because it remains as a line item, as a risk. And, we don't see it as value added, and we think we need to put it behind us and stop talking about it and move on. That's what we believe.
Okay. Councillor Boucher?
I think Warden Marchand, it's time to make a motion for the status quo and to send a copy of that motion and a letter to the Federal Transport Minister that we stand with the industry here as the status quo, and that's the end of it. Let's put it to bed.
There's a motion on the floor that we stay with, I guess, status quo in the port, and we send it off to Federal Transport Canada. Is there a seconder?
I would second it for discussion. Is it something that we need to do? I mean, I don't think it's asked of us to do that. I think they've been running under the status quo for the last number of years, and it's working. So if it's been identified at the mayors and wardens where everybody agrees, I don't see the need for send a letter.
I think we had passed a motion here a few years ago. Staying with status quo, I don't know if it'll help, but there was a motion, you say, at the mayors and wardens.
I think now that it's come to the table again with our three main industry heads here, that we should approve the motion, go through with it, and send the copy back to the minister. Tell him that we're satisfied with the status quo and leave it at that. That's the same as what the mayors and wardens agreed upon last month. So we're just going to back up what they've said at the mayors and wardens.
Okay.
I'm fine with that if it's necessary. Does industry think that's necessary for this council to do that, or do we just leave it as is, leave sleeping dogs lie, and keep moving on the way we've been in the past?
I think it's
number of
best
years?
to endorse.
I think it's important. I mean, it's certainly important that as industry and municipalities that we're aligned with each other's interests. And I think it goes a long way to send a statement about what our expectations are as industry and a municipality in the direction that we think everybody now needs to be heading in. And again, it's not focusing on the issue of port marketing development. We think there's just another way and a safer way, a less riskier way of doing it. But we need to put that governance issue and stop having it flaring up every time or every year or every time a new business or its principals or its financiers start looking at this thing and wondering what that's going to bring to the table.
I don't know if it's necessary, but does it hurt? Probably not, especially since you don't know what other representations would be made to the minister. So certainly, probably no downside to it.
I think the other area is there was discussion about the federal government funding some studies about the subject, and why spend that money? We should spend the money on something that's going to create development opportunities, not go away from them. So I think that message would be helpful in us not going down that path, because I know that was discussed over the last year a number of different times.
By this Superport. Okay, it's been moved and seconded on discussion. Question's been called. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Raise your. Motion is carried. Any more comments? I'd like to thank you for your presentation this evening.
Great, and we're anxious to see you for a visit if that's something you can work on.
Yes, it was. We met today, Maris and I, with Mark, and it was very informative on the forestry operations for myself, for sure. And I think all of you would find that discussion, I guess, very interesting, for sure.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Dave. Thank you, Mark. Moving on to our final presentation this evening, we have Public Health Services, Celeste Hotel. Celeste, one of your mics. Just the red button on the left-hand side. See you guys.
Good evening, everybody. I'd like to thank the warden and the councilors for an opportunity to join you this evening. My presentation is going to be a far cry from the last two, where we talked a lot about economic development and business. So my presentation tonight is going to be more about people. So while I work at public health, I wanted to share with you that I'm actually here kind of representing two groups that I've been actively involved with for the last 2 years since starting in this role that directly are related to the work that's happening in Richmond County and also in the town of Port Hawkesbury. And it's kind of interesting for me to look across the table and to see Maris, because I had conversations about similar issues that I'm going to be bringing up tonight with Maris in his previous role in the town of Port Hawkesbury. But the two groups that I'm involved with are a group called Seniors Take Action and a group called HEART, or the Health Equity Action Resource Team. And I've been very involved with them in the work in both of these communities since starting in my role. So I wanted to kind of build on that work, but also build on the conversations that started during the municipal election. Oops. Oh, okay. How do I just advance
Just maybe
this
hit the
next?
arrow, the down arrow.
So I did prepare a slide deck, but most of my discussion this evening is going to be more kind of in a conversational nature. I wanted to come here this evening, again, as I mentioned, to kind of build on the conversations that began to happen back during the lead up to the municipal election. And as I look across the room, I think all of you, with the exception of Gilbert, were able to join us on September 27th, when the two groups that I was involved in invited you to the table to talk about some of the issues that are affecting municipalities, like food security, poverty, and housing, so that we could begin what I call a new conversation, or a paradigm shift, if you will, or a change in the discourse around how municipalities can show leadership in addressing positive health outcomes. So some of the conversation that took place tonight is what typically people think about municipalities doing. I mean, a lot of municipalities are involved with things like economic development and tourism, police services, fire services, waste management. These are the nuts and bolts of what keeps municipalities going. But very rarely do you hear at municipal tables people talking about the issues that are affecting the quality of life for the residents and the people that they live in. So these are the kinds of things that I wanted to be able to move forward today. And I'm kind of motivated for a number of different reasons, because first of all, it's a new council. And there's never a better time to try to get your opinions in when you're talking to a new council. I guess the second thing is that you're on what I consider to be, you're in an opportune place to make change. It's a new year. You're about to start a strategic planning process. You're about to, do a new budget. You've got a reorganization that's happening, and you're going to be getting a new CAO. So, like, the stars have lined up perfectly for this council to start thinking about ways that they can look at creating healthier communities. Because if you have healthier people and healthier communities, you're going to have a healthier economy. And it kind of reminded me, I took some notes during the earlier presentations, and I would like to follow up maybe with Keith and Jeff, because some of what they were talking about around the economic development and some of the assets, well, they're talking about assets in building economies and attracting businesses to communities. One of the things that I wasn't hearing, but I'm sure you are talking about it, is one of the biggest reasons people move to communities is because of quality of life issues. So particularly in that generation of young people, and we're living in a municipality where there's significant outmigration. 42% of your population are over 55 years old, and people aren't getting any younger. We're losing all our young people. You want to start bringing them back in? You need to start creating things that are going to appeal to them. And those are what we call quality of life issues. Those are what builds healthier communities. So in order for you to kind of show some leadership as municipal council, people are going to be looking to see what you can do. They want you to be able to show them how it can be done. And I think that the time is right for that to happen. So I'm really quite excited. Okay, so next. Do I just press enter?
The down arrow. Just hit the down arrow.
I should put my glasses on. That might help. Every laptop is different. Oh, okay. Okay, thank you. So one of the key things about addressing issues around what I call health equity or the social determinants of health is that there's no one organization, one level of government, or one person that can respond to it. It's a shared response that we all have to do it together. So strategic partnerships are going to be needed. And the other thing that's really needed when we're talking about addressing positive health outcomes and creating healthier communities is an open mind. So we need to be able to start thinking of things differently. And that's why I said earlier, it's a paradigm shift. So the conversations that need to happen at tables need to start going in a different direction if we're going to start making these improvements. So as I mentioned earlier, municipalities are a lot more than the things that I had identified earlier. So I guess my question to you is, are you up for the challenge? Because if you are, there are many partners that want to work with you to achieve these healthier outcomes. So I've mentioned social determinants of health, and there are a lot of factors that go into affecting people's health that really are not even health related. The average person, when they think about what brings about good health, don't think about these things. Most people will respond by saying, oh, it's your diet, it's whether or not you smoke, or whether or not you exercise. But I have a question for you. So what do you think is the most single thing on that list that determines good health? Take a look at the list. Would it surprise you to learn that the biggest income and income distribution is the single biggest contributor to poor or positive health? It's not whether or not you smoke. It's not whether or not you get out and exercise. It's not your genetics. It's not where you live. It's what your income is. People that live in poverty have poorer health. So if we can change that conversation and we can get people out of poverty, we're going to improve health outcomes. Some of the other things that have a direct impact on people's health I've listed below, and there's many. So you can't possibly talk about them all, but I am going to use a couple of examples just to kind of explain how, as municipalities, you can play a very key role in addressing health outcomes. So I think it's already known that Richmond County Municipality has taken a lot of leadership in supporting some of these what we call social determinants of health, in that they've provided funding over the years to address issues around food insecurity. Recently just contributed $12,000 to food banks in the area to contribute to that. They've also been involved in supporting early childhood development organizations. They've been supporting other projects. A lot of funds go into recreation, which is really important in terms of improving the quality of lives in people. So Richmond County has supported recently, over the last couple of years, the community support outreach position. So I think Richmond County has kind of done a lot to kind of help to contribute these things to these, to help contribute to the social determinants of health, but I think there's opportunity to do a lot more. So I just want to kind of point out, I love this slide because a lot of times people think, when they think about health, they think that it's equality, that everybody has access to the same services. But really, when we're talking about improving health outcomes, it's more than equality, it's about equity. Not everybody has access to the same level of good health outcomes because there are barriers that have been put up. So I love this diagram, so if you have a little look at it, it kind of really paints a good picture in that in the first image, everybody is kind of given the same block to stand on, but you'll notice that the person on the far right can't see over the fence, so he doesn't benefit from watching the ball game. So in the second slide, the individuals are given different levels so that they can kind of level the playing field, if you will. So in that case, everybody has equal access. But that really doesn't achieve equity either. It's not until you remove the barriers that people can actually truly achieve equity. So that's kind of the focus of the work that I do. And every time I kind of work with community groups or with my partners in municipalities, my goal is to try to ensure that we have equity across the board so that no one person or group is advantaged or disadvantaged in being able to experience good health. So people with disabilities should have the same opportunity as somebody who doesn't have a disability to be able to achieve good health. So that's just an example of how that works. So your term as council goes beyond 4 years. Everything that you do or commitment today to create healthier communities is going to fast forward for years to come. So what you do in the next 4 years is going to have lasting impacts in the years to come. So one of the things that really challenges municipalities, particularly rural municipalities, is that you have so much on your plate. Like, you have so many challenges in front of you, and how are you possibly going to do it all? You also have low-density population, you have an aging demographic, you have that youth out-migration, you have an economy that's could be failing or opportunities for growth, employment opportunities not as there, and you have a lower tax base. So you do have a lot of challenges ahead of you that maybe a larger urban center may not have. But the other thing that you also have that's an advantage is that you have a smaller population base. So you don't have near the same number of people that need to access some of those services. So I guess as you're going into your strategic planning process, you're going to be afforded a lot of opportunities to start having some of these discussions. And presumably when you start your planning process, one of the things that you'll be doing is a SWOT analysis, where you'll be looking at what are some of your strengths, weaknesses, what are some of your opportunities and your challenges as a municipality. And one of the things I guess I would invite you to do when you have those discussions is to talk about it in these real sense in terms of health outcomes. Don't forget to have that conversation when you're talking about what are some of those opportunities and weaknesses. So one of the key ways that municipalities can really improve health outcomes is by engaging their community. One of the most important things that you can do as a municipal unit is to show leadership in how you engage your community. So municipalities cannot possibly do it all. You have to do it in partnership with other people. You need to look at what organizations can be the experts and can advise you. As municipal councilors, you can't possibly know everything. That's why you invite people into the conversation. That's why you have people like the people before me and people like me coming and present to you to help inform you so that you can make the best possible decisions. One of the things that you really need to do is to kind of communicate what your strategy is going to be to your public. How are you going to engage them in discussions? One of the things I heard earlier during Keith's presentation is that one of the things that they offer is some support with strategic planning in terms of engaging the business community. So there is an opportunity for the business community to be engaged in discussions around economic development. What opportunities exist to engage the other members of your community to talk about healthy outcomes? So it's going to be really important during a strategic planning process that you seek community input on some of these issues to help kind of inform your decisions going forward. And there's all kinds of ways that you can do that, and you can decide how you're going to do that, whether it's town hall meetings, workshops, focus groups. Take a look at what are some of the strengths that currently exist in your community, and also what are some of the gaps. Really stop and think about what are your values as a community. What do you want to be known as in Richmond County? I mean, when I sit around and I talk to people about what makes Richmond County special, you know, you always hear about the people. It's the people that make Richmond County special. Well, let's draw on some of our values. What is it about the people that makes us either want to choose to live here or to return here? What is it about our cultures, our Acadian culture and our First Nation communities that contributes to the values of our community? One of the key things when you're wanting to engage the community is when you engage them, make sure that you get back to them about what they've said. I mean, people don't expect to necessarily give their opinion and for their opinion always to show up in decisions, but what they do expect is that they're heard, so that you kind of get back to them and let them know that we appreciate what you've said. There's different ways that municipalities have been involved in getting input for the community, and some municipalities, I know that you have a number of committees in place in your structure to get different input, whether it's planning or your audit or your recreation advisory. In some municipalities, they actually have a citizen advisory committee that actually specifically is set up to look at these types of health outcomes or social related issues. So that might be something to consider. So the two examples I'm going to provide you with key things, tangible things that you can do as a municipality to improve health outcomes is one about creating an age-friendly community. The municipality has received funding through the Department of Seniors to develop an age-friendly plan. That's a very exciting time for you, and it provides you with an opportunity to actually respond to what is a very specific demographic in Richmond County with 42% of your population 55 and over. To me, having an age-friendly community and a plan in place is really going to speak volumes to your senior population, that you actually care about what their needs are. By having an age-friendly community, it means that you're recognizing that seniors require different services. You're also respecting the decisions and what they bring to the table. Seniors are not always a draw on the economy. I mean, I'm a young senior, and I'm still a vibrant, active person in our community. We have people on our council who are seniors. So seniors make a huge contribution to the community, and we need to draw on what they can contribute. And we also need to include them in all elements of community life. So you have an opportunity here. You have the funding available. You need to get your action plan done so that you can incorporate some of those key things into your strategic planning process about creating an age-friendly community. The 8 domains of an age-friendly community, for example, are all kind of connected to some of the work that you do as municipalities. Looking at those things like outdoor spaces, social participation, communication, community support, and things like housing are all going to help contribute to an age-friendly community. So specifically, what are some of the things that you can do as a municipality? Again, is to have that citizen advisory committee that actually is committed to engaging older adults. To make sure that your local, perhaps your municipal council would like to make a public statement about that, or a proclamation about your commitment to age-friendly communities. Have that action plan in place that I mentioned earlier, and then to commit to kind of measuring your ongoing activities. I mean, if you have an action plan in place, or if you're doing strategic planning, unless you're measuring the success of it and the outcomes that are associated with it, there's no point in having it. So an action plan or a strategic plan without an evaluation or a measurement is not worth the paper it's written on. So it's going to be really important to measure it and report back. So one of the other things, for example, is affordable and safe housing. You hear a lot when you talk about housing, which comes up in everywhere I go. I often hear, well, it's the federal responsibility, it's a provincial responsibility, and it's a municipal. And then I also hear, well, it's not really our responsibility. And I think a quote that I heard about 3 or 4 weeks ago on CBC, when Mike Savage does his weekly or monthly chat on CBC, Mike Savage, he put it very well, and I'd like to quote him. He said, housing is got a federal, the money comes from the feds. The province has the jurisdiction over it, but the municipalities have the problem. And I don't think he could have put it any better, because what's happening is that we have in our communities a need for safe and affordable housing, not only for seniors, but for other people as well. And we need to get on the bandwagon now about that, because the federal dollars are coming down. The province has committed funding. We have money available, but yet we're not organized to respond to that. So on a really positive note, I'm pleased to say that on Wednesday, the town of Port Hawkesbury CAO and Mayor and myself and Maris and Brian are going to be talking about maybe holding a think tank to talk about how we can proceed with affordable housing in our area. Because this is something that we can't ignore. It's a problem in both our communities. What we can do as a municipality is unknown at this point, but I mean, there are certainly opportunities for municipalities to get involved in the conversation and try to figure out what they can do to help move the issue forward. So some of the ways that municipalities can be involved is through land use planning, to understand that there's a whole continuum of housing that's required, the whole zoning or land banking, sharing services, for example, looking into properties, doing some research. So there's all kinds of ways that municipalities might be able to get involved in moving this issue along and finding out how, you know, who is going to be in the best position as a community organization to kind of take it forward. So again, it's those strategic partnerships are going to be really important in improving health outcomes. So there are many ways that we, as municipalities, you can contribute to healthier communities. I've just listed a couple, but there's things like public transportation, poverty reduction, walkable communities, capacity building, involving citizens in community engagement. Many municipalities are showing leadership in this respect throughout the province as well as throughout the country. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. It's finding out what's being done in other places, best practices, things that have been successful, and incorporating these kinds of things into your planning process will go a long way to really improving health outcomes. So now I invite any questions.
Any comments or questions? Thank you, Celeste.
You're just wowed?
Councillor Martel?
You know, I purposely said to Yvonne, oh, I'll come to committee of the whole because that's not televised. And then you had a motion that you're going to start televising them.
As soon as we knew you were coming.
Oh, of course, of course.
Councillor Martel?
Yeah, I guess, Celeste, thanks for the presentation. I mean, it's very enlightening. I mean, the time we spent in Louisdale at that forum with the people that were there was the same thing. There's a lot of issues. There's certainly multiple issues, and as I talked about, is that talked about the federal provincial government, and we're bounded by, when it comes to housing, the Municipal Government Act doesn't allow us to contribute to a private sector to do any development. And I'm sure that there's probably other ways that we can do it, but it seems like, for example, in our district, we have the community group has purchased a piece of land, almost 10 acres, and willing to give it to the private sector to develop affordable housing. But having said that, the municipality can't really participate because the piece of land is not serviced. So in order to service it, the cost to the private sector would be more than trying to develop it in a service area. So those are the types of things that we're faced with every day.
Yep.
We're certainly looking at ways to approach the Union of Nova Scotia municipalities to try to change that while we're in the process of changing the Municipal Government Act to allow us to do things like that. And I think that I'm sure that all councillors around the table are willing to try to do something to help seniors and people in poverty.
And I think that's one of the key things that municipalities can do through your union of municipalities is to lobby for changes with respect to housing. Because right now we know that one of the single biggest barriers about getting affordable housing done by private developers is the fact that municipalities are not necessarily able to partner with them. And the second thing is that the amount of money that's available through the new bill, $25,000, is insufficient even to cover the costs. So these are changes that if municipal units are to work with provincial government, maybe changes could come about.
I'm hearing there's some rumors that the provincial government is looking at increasing the amount of money to developers from $25,000 to $50,000 per unit. And I've talked to some developers, and they say that would make it worth feasible. At 25,000, they can't do it. So if the government, as soon as the provincial government announces that, I think you're going to see more development in that area. Thank you, guys.
Any more comments or questions?
Just one comment, I guess. I'd like to know the development aspect that they get from the federal government. How does that make it more affordable to the seniors? I know they do get funding available to build housing units.
Okay.
But at the same time, how does that make it more affordable for me as a senior that wants to go to a home?
Well, I guess it depends on who's actually doing the building. And so right now, the federal government's announcement to the province, a dedicated amount of their funding is for seniors. Another portion is for with domestic violence shelters. So in some areas where there are, like in this area, we don't have a not-for-profit organization that's involved in affordable housing like there are in other jurisdictions. Like, for example, New Dawn Enterprises, Cape Breton Housing Association, or Cape Breton Housing Affordable Association, I think. And in other parts of Antigonish, for example, has a not-for-profit. So here we don't have a not-for-profit, which prevents us from being able to access some funding. So that's kind of that's a solution that could potentially bring money in so that it can then be the rents are subsidized. They're lower for seniors. Like right now, there are a lot of seniors housing facility apartments that are going up, and they're lovely, but a significant number of them are not affordable for persons on low income. And not only for seniors, but apartments, period. Like when you're only making $700 a month, and that's your only source of income, you can only pay maybe $400 for rent. You can't pay $900.
Yeah, because the only subsidization that I knew about was that it was subsidized by the private individual that's building the homes, but there was no such thing as subsidized for the seniors actually going to the home. There was a certain amount of time allotted whereby you could have your rent frozen for, say, 5 to 10 years, I don't know. But after that lift was over with, you could put the rent up to whatever.
Well, there's rent subsidies that are available, rent subsidies that can be requested anyway, there's more information that we can make available to you for sure. Yeah.
But I'm sure that should be made available through the seniors secretariat or somebody that's involved with seniors.
Yeah.
To the seniors in, Richmond County. Okay.
Councilor Martel?
Yeah, I think in the past, Celeste, it's been tried by community groups. I know at one point Development Amadam was going to build a 20-unit facility, and the cost at that time, it was quite a while ago, was $1.4 million, and it was hard to get the board of directors to kind of sign on the dotted line to be able, as volunteers, to be able to put their name on that kind of a mortgage. So we had the working with the province, we had the money, but when push came to shove, people were not willing to sign up. And that's why that we didn't really ever ended up with a nonprofit group. So from that point on, we started kind of moving it to the private sector where they're risk takers, they're business people. There was a return on investment for them. When we looked at the numbers, it wasn't feasible because we couldn't sustain it in the long term. So we just didn't do it.
Yeah.
But it's still something that we could look at now. If they're going to increase the amount of subsidies and stuff, it might be a different story. We might be able to do it.
It's hard to know. I mean, every community has to kind of, respond to what's needed in their community. But one of the biggest challenges for community organizations in Richmond County is that there are far too many of them. I mean, we have over 200 volunteer organizations in Richmond County, and we're drawing from the same volunteers. Our volunteers are burnt out, are maxed out, and 90% of them are seniors. So, again, I'm offering more suggestions, but one of the ways municipal government can provide some leadership within our community of volunteers is to try to bring together people to talk about, are there ways that we can continue to provide services with fewer organizations that have a multiple mandate, like maybe an umbrella organization that does 20 different things as opposed to 20 different organizations with 20 different boards, with 20 different staff complements. we have boards of directors in Richmond County that are not even certain what their roles are. We have, so we need to invest in building leadership and doing board governance and supporting community organizations with their planning process so that these organizations can be the best that they can be. But we have far too many. I mean, we could probably do with 40% of them and bring some together with similar mandates. I mean, there's no one solution.
More comments? I'll just make a few comments. I think around the issue of housing, subsidized housing and affordable housing, I think people, I don't know if there's some misunderstandings about it, but a lot of people want to be in affordable housing, which I guess if you were a private developer or if you were a volunteer group doing it, you'd get the money so much per unit, be it 25, be it 50, you'd build the building. But in order to get that money, you have to enter into a contract where you're signing up for 10 plus years to provide rent at a fixed amount. And that becomes a problem for some organizations. You don't know what the conditions are going to be in 4 or 5 years for insurance, for fuel costs, for taxation, for services. So it is hard for an organization to set a rent for 10 plus years. But in order to get into that kind of a building, you need to have, there's income maximums. You can't get into that having pensions of $50,000, $60,000 a year. But you can get into subsidized housing, which is what we know as the seniors' housings that's all across the county right now. Because that housing doesn't have an income max, but it does take 30 plus % of your income. So I think people want the criteria that's used for subsidized housing to allow them to get into affordable housing where their pension could be whatever. They could have oodles of money sitting in banks and still pay a fixed rent, be it $500, whatever the rent was set out. So I think a lot of people, when it comes to this affordable housing, if it's built for people that their incomes are lower. And, it is hard for private developers, I guess, to get in with those, with that criteria. But I don't know what the municipality, we're looking at what we can do to help developers and get into this game because, yes, it is something that's needed right across this county for sure.
And the subsidized housing, as you all know, the units are old, in poor condition, and they're not likely to get new ones because the waiting list in this area is not significant enough to warrant new builds. So unless every senior puts themselves on the waiting list that inflates how many people need housing, they're not going to build new housing in this area because right now the waiting list for seniors housing, there's not that many people on the waiting list because they want specific apartments. So, I can tell you how many people are on the waiting list. The highest waiting list would be Ayrshire and St. Peter's because people don't necessarily want to go into Scoos, so they don't put their name on the list there. So you have to have big waiting lists to justify new builds in the area under the subsidized housing program. And many of those, I don't know if some of you have actually visited some of those apartments, but they're in dire need of some upgrades. I mean, that was the first iteration of subsidized housing for seniors that was built, and they're not in the greatest of shape.
They're doing some work in some of them now.
Yeah, slowly.
Any more comments or questions? Thank you very much, Celeste, and maybe we'll get you involved in the
planning process. I'm with you. I'm there.
I was more thinking the Citizen Advisory Committee.
Oh, that too.
But that as well.
Invite me to your planning process. Thank you very much.
Moving on to item 5 on our agenda, which is correspondence. Everyone has the list of checks for the month of December, and if there's any questions, you can forward the email to myself or Maris, and we'll try to answer that for you. On to item 6, which is an item added by our Deputy Warden. 2.
So I was contacted by a resident who is currently living on what is known as Soldiers Cove Road, which used to be known as Lewis Cove Road, and just a lot of confusion with regards to, I guess, why it was changed, and the fact that most people still commonly refer to it as Lewis Cove Road. So when people are either on some kind of a delivery or even on 911 calls, I believe that there has been some confusion with regards to people who are in that area looking to find somebody and really not necessarily knowing for sure where they're going. So I did speak to the gentleman who contacted me, and from what I could gather from the policies that we have, I do have a list of people who live on that road and or are landowners in that area. So there are 30. I have 37 signatures here, and there's really not a lot of people on that road. So I do have 37 signatures, and I said that I would bring it to council tonight and just get the ball rolling, I guess, on that process to name the road Lewis Cove Road from Soldiers Cove Road. Making a motion.
I'll second that.
It's been moved by the deputy that we put in a request to change the name from Soldiers Cove Road to Lewis Cove Road, and seconded by Councillor Boucher. Any discussion? Questions been called. All those in favor signify by raising your right hand. Motion carried. Before moving on to item 7, I guess all I want to do is inform the public that we're going to be meeting with the representatives of SAT. I think there's been some questions from some members of the county, and we're going to see what we can do about the service that we currently have, and if there's anything we can do for that. So hopefully within sometime this month, we will be meeting with the board, and we'll let the public know exactly what the outcome of those meetings are. Moving on to the 15-minute question period. Anyone have any questions?
I'm just curious.
State your name for the...
Lisa Boudreau.
Lisa
Thank
Boudreau.
you. Just a concerned resident, chair of the Tourism and Trade Association. I just have a question. I'm just curious. A few weeks ago, there was a presentation done by a local business person who wanted to develop property here for affordable housing. And I think he was asking for a zoning change, possibly. Did council respond to him?
We've met with him, and I think he's taken that application off the table. He's looking at another piece of property, so we're seeing what we can do as a municipality to help him in that. Hopefully we'll get back to him soon.
Is another piece of property in another county, or is it here in Richmond?
In this county, in Arishat, very close to his previous property.
Good. All right, thank you.
Any more questions? And a motion to go in camera. We'll go in camera. Okay, for those of you that don't have the agenda, we're going to be going in camera to discuss a memorandum of understanding between us and the other two municipalities for Brand 6, and to discuss a committee appointment.
Does those have to be camera sessions in camera? I don't see what the confidentiality or personnel issue involved the Brand 6 or a committee appointment. Why is there a need to go in camera?
The memorandum had some legal advice with it.
Well, it's only a change of memorandum, isn't it?
It's, yeah, I just had it on there. Hit it again, this side.
I may address council, basically there are a number of reasons why we go in camera. One is obviously legal. If we're discussing a legal agreement between parties, then typically that would be an in-camera session. The other item relates to personnel. When there's appointments to committees or staff issues or whatever, then that's again a personnel item, and it should be in camera, because there are a number of points to be discussed with regards to that committee appointment, and it's better to be doing it in camera. And then when you return, you've had your council discussion, and then you're ready to render a decision based on that. So it's I put the two items in camera because that's the process I'm used to. If council has any concerns around the reservations,
That's why I have concerns about
Yeah.
this, because I don't agree that there are in-camera sessions. I do have concerns with in-camera. It deals with personnel issue, and I mean personnel issue is to deal with staff. I don't consider a committee appointment
James, can you put your mic on?
personnel issue.
Councillor Bush or Payash?
No, and I don't
Yeah.
consider a committee appointment, somebody appointed to a committee, as a personnel issue. I'm sorry, it's not a personnel issue. We're just appointing somebody to a committee, and I can't see why that should be in camera.
basically, if you have a number of candidates, then and you're discussing the qualifications of those candidates, then rightfully so, it should be done in camera, not in a public session where you've got a number of candidates and you're discussing the qualities and the qualifications and really the merit of that individual serving on that committee.
Oh, in that case there, when what I receive in my correspondence, one appointment to the committee we're talking about in camera session. All I had was one person, so we're not discussing any two individuals or three individuals.
There was an email sent out that we received.
I got my email, but it was only one person. A second email, I was at work today, I didn't get the second one. Or I didn't check the second.
Is there any other
But if
objections
there is
to?
two, that's okay, but I find we're going in camera for a lot of issues that I don't think we should be going in camera for.
They'll be short. So moved by Councillor Bushy to go in camera, seconded by Councillor Martel. Question's been called. All those in favor signify by raising your right hand. We'll go in camera in a couple of minutes.